Well, I'm really excited to be moderating this panel of three really cool people who I've just met tonight. So first, could each of you just tell us a little bit about what your creative journey has been, what your steps were that led you to your currently thriving photography business? So start with Drew.
Sure. Hey guys, I'm Drew Gurian, portrait photographer, as Robert said, based here in the city. Most of my work is in the music, entertainment, celebrity industries. Been in the industry for about 10 years. Finished school in 2005 and worked at an ad agency right out of school as a graphic designer. Very quickly realized that the corporate world was not my shtick, and left there and started freelancing. While I was in school, I had interned for a photographer by the name of Joe McNally, who a lot of you may be familiar with, a very well-known portrait photographer. So I interned for him in school, had stayed in touch with him for years after the fact. And then in 2008, a couple years after I finished school, he offered me a job as his first assistant. So ended up taking that. It was sort of in the midst of when I was trying to figure out how to grow and sort of progress in my career. So I ended up assisting Joe for about 4.5 years. I was traveling the world for about 75% of the year during that time. So a pretty crazy journey. And I obviously learned a ton about producing shoots and lighting and all of that. So went off on my own a couple of years ago, based in Brooklyn now. So off to a really strong start. Have a very long way to go, as we all do. I don't think you ever get to a point when you feel really, really great about what's happening. I think it's a constant journey that never ever ends. But very happy to be doing this for a career and to be based here and surviving in the city. So thanks for having us.
I came about photography in a sort of a long-winded way. I'm self-taught, and I think a lot of it came from a lot of travels I did as a child and kind of into my adult life. And I was lucky to, I returned to Spain to do actually a fashion internship, and it fell through, and it was like some act of God. I think I ended up interning for Magnum photographer Alex Majoli, who, I don't know if any of you know him, he's a real hard ass and really kicked my ass, and it pushed me into like a better level. And after that, I was actually interned at National Geographic Traveler, and then when I moved to New York, I was lucky to work as a photo editor at National Geographic Adventure magazine. And it was there I really learned about storytelling and kind of, obviously about good imagery, but also really the bigger picture, I think. And, I had been there a couple of years, and I loved it so much, but I was kind of like, I want to go back to photography. And the answer kind of came with the 2008 financial crash, because the magazine unfortunately closed. But that kind of forced me to be back on my feet shooting. And from there on, I've sort of taken more of an art fashion approach. So a lot of my work is storytelling within an image. And through this, I've sort of developed an eye for more cinematography. So I've been shooting more short films. And I really recommend that for anybody who's a still photographer, to push the image. So that's where I am.
Thank you.
So yeah, I also, like Drew, I didn't really start off as a creative director. So right now I'm a creative director, global creative director at Y&R, Young and Rubkin, on Dell account. But how I started, I went to school to be an architect. That didn't really work out, as you can see. It says something when you go to school for 5 years and your last semester of your school, when your professor tells you should probably not be an architect. You'll pass and you'll graduate. So like every New Yorkers, I had to make money. So I started freelancing different ad agencies, because at the time, that's the only kind of marketable skill I had, like using Photoshops or whatnot and working and creative. I didn't even think going to school for advertising even was a choice. So I kind of started out working at different agencies. I freelanced. Until then, I still didn't want to work in advertising. I just didn't think it was a job for me. And I started working on it, and first year, second year, third year, and I'm still here. And I started working at different places like Havas Worldwide on accounts like Heineken, Dos Equis, Global 360. So I work on everything from print, TV to digital to social platform. And after that, I started working at Spike DDB, which is Spike Lee's agency. He has an advertising agency, believe it or not. I was there for like a year working on Cadillac and Chevy account, and since last November, I started working on Y&R, and it's been great. And day to day, I work with a lot of different photographers, interact with them a lot, and collaborate with them. I hate saying working with them because I just feel like, I don't know, there's something about that puts a weird gap and distance between me as a creative director and a photographer, and that just makes me feel uncomfortable, makes them feel uncomfortable. So it'll be an interesting conversation we're going to have today.
And I'm Andrea Wise. I'm a photo editor at Viewfind, which is a photojournalism platform. So actually, if any of you have an iPhone, you can get the Viewfind app. It's free in the App Store. If you have an Android phone, you have to wait a little bit because we're still developing that. But we're trying to create a new platform to get visual journalism stories out to a mass audience and also create different models for mostly freelance, but also staffers. We don't discriminate, but for photographers to monetize their archives and get commissions. So that's me. I am now, for the first time in my life, I am working for a company. And you guys have worked for others, and now you're working for yourself. So I thought maybe you could talk a little bit about what are the differences between working for yourself and working for someone else, the pros and cons. What did you learn from working for Joe McNally, working at a magazine that now has informed your business?
Wow. It's a big question.
You want me to start?
Whichever. Sure. Go for
Well, working in a magazine, I mean, it's a bit of a different context than assisting. And to be honest, I kind of wish I had assisted more, but I was very much like, no, I can do it. So we'll see how that pans out. But I guess for working in a magazine, I mean, it was an incredible opportunity. I had the smartest, kindest, coolest people kind of at my fingertips. But it's also, I think we're in this day and age, especially more and more, where being an entrepreneur and working for yourself is kind of becoming almost normal. And we were sort of in that transitional phase, I think, when we kind of started off. So I think there's pros to both, and I think there's cons to both. And I think it's really about making what your vision is come to life. And if that means, no matter how old you are, if that means working with someone and kind of getting to know the ropes better, I think that's such a good idea. And there's, I mean, a million YouTube videos you can watch of self-taught and this and learning. And of course, those are great. But I think one-on-one and peer interaction and mentorship is incredibly important. But I also really believe in going out there and doing it. And you only learn by your mistakes. And I test all the time because it's a chance to really flex your muscles and kind of try new gear or try new lights or a whole new scenario that's really not always on a client, and it's kind of something you can just do in private, and if it works out, amazing, and you can show it to a client, which could potentially lead to new jobs. So it's sort of just like one big ball of learning that's constantly happening, and I think having both a mentor and doing yourself is pretty much parallel and paramount to a successful business.
Sure. I think for myself, obviously you have to be a huge self-starter. You have to have certain qualities that not everybody, can do. I started out working at an ad agency, and then I assisted for a long time. I don't think that I could have jumped into the freelance world right out of school. I would not have been prepared for that. Some people could maybe do that, but I would have fallen on my face. For me, working at an agency and just seeing how business works, which I think for a lot of not just photographers but artists, we end up coming out of school without any sort of a business background whatsoever. So for me to actually work in a corporate realm and be around account executives and salespeople and just understand a business model was something I'd never experienced before. And then, of course, working for a photographer, one thing that I was conscious to do along that road was there are career assistants out there for sure, but I was always in the industry to be a photographer. I was shooting before working for Joe, and then when I transitioned into working for him, I saw that as my my grad school, basically. It was in the midst of applying to grad schools that he actually hired me, so I saw it as a way to sort of go to grad school plus some, get an experience of traveling the world and not going to crazy debt and actually make money. So I did that for a long time and learned more than I ever could have imagined. And what I did over that period of time was I forced myself to shoot while working for him, because you have to make sure that you're actually understanding all the things that you're presented with. So it's a big difference, setting up lights for somebody than it is actually setting them up for yourself and shooting the photo and all of that. So, made a lot of connections within the industry as well. while working for him. And I think I really prepared myself as best as I possibly could while working for him. So that way, once I actually did take that step out on my own, I had some things kind of set up. I mean, while I was sort of finishing up working for him within that last year, I started shooting, a couple things for the Associated Press, for Rolling Stone, for the Times, and those people that I still do shoot for now. And to sort of get those under my belt while still working for somebody was hugely helpful. I think just for building some momentum and for making me feel good about actually taking that step out, which is so scary to do. So, it enabled me to do that with a bit more calm and clarity.
Anything to add, Thomas? You've been a freelancer and now...
Yeah, very different. I think, as you were saying, I mean, I have this protective layers when I work in a big agency of account people and whatnot who does the business for me. So I can be that, excuse my language, creative asshole as much as I want and let other people work with the money, with the budget. I mean, I do as a creative director have to keep in mind businesses. Some creatives forget 50% of your job is to be a businessman, and a lot of creatives forget that. So, I mean, I definitely have to do that. But in bigger agencies, you definitely have a little more support. And when I was freelancing, you don't really have that. For example, when I'm freelancing an ad agency, that's a different story, but I freelance for like GQ or smaller not smaller, sorry. A magazine company where, figure it out. Like, we hired you to do this and that. And that definitely was a learning lesson for me, like putting me in a place and obviously like made me definitely become more humble. And because, creative takes you this much, which is great. Storytelling takes you that much, and, your experiences take you that much. But, being business savvy, you really can't go to school to learn that. Especially in New York City, where there's no guidebook as to how to survive in New York City as a creative. There's no such. So I think freelancing, I mean, for anyone, I teach at SV School of Visual Arts, and I tell all my students, I don't care how much some people offer you to do a miserable job, quit and freelance for at least a year, and you'll learn. You will be demolished and you'll cry, but you will learn so much.
Yeah.
And
that's how it is.
That's all really great points. I think that's something that a lot of creatives underestimate, is just the amount of time that it actually takes to run a business compared to the amount of time that you're actually creating, whether it's behind a camera, behind a computer. The rest of that time, I'd say for myself, it's maybe 15 or 20% of the time. That other, say, 80% of the time is behind a computer and on the phone, dealing with emails and marketing and clients and pre-production. And there's so many things involved to actually make a shoot happen and to market yourself and all of those things. So, it's something that I think is a huge wake-up call when you actually jump into this field and realize how much of a part of this is actually learning to run a business.
And I think the idea of kind of like this artist who can show up to a job hungover, it doesn't really exist anymore. It's like you have to be on it from before, during, after, and then beyond. You have to be organized. You have to respond. I think there's such an immediacy these days that, even if it's not the final edits of the shoot or whatever it is, it's something to keep the client interested, happy, like always kind of going above and beyond maybe what you thought you could even do. And I'll just reiterate again, like how important organization is. And we're so lucky to have all these phones that have, can connect to our Google Drive and to our Dropbox and this and that. And I mean, I can't even imagine life without it these days. I don't even know where we would be. Thank God.
So that's a perfect segue into talking about pain points for running a photography business. What are some of your biggest pain points and how do you manage those? What are some resources you found help you?
I think marketing is a huge thing that is inevitably, it's a time suck. It takes a lot of time and energy and money to sort of figure this all out. And nobody can tell you this is 100% going to get you work or this is just do this thing. It's a culmination for me of many things. And I'm still figuring it out. And I think we all are and always will be as technologies continue to progress and all of that. So there's never going to be one answer. For me, for instance, in terms of social media, I blogged for a long time and I had a pretty good audience. And then I sort of just fell off the face of the earth with that because I put my energy elsewhere. So now I'm sort of transitioning everything over to Tumblr and maybe a little bit behind the ball. But like you have to continue to transition these things as time moves forward. And Yeah, marketing is a tough thing. As far as resources go, there's many different things out there. Obviously, publications and organizations, like an SMP or something like that. As far as marketing goes, I'd use a company called Agency Access, which gives me sort of, it's a database of ad agency information that they keep up to date. So I use those databases to send out email blasts, and then based on that information, I send out actual print mailers from there, and then send email follow-ups and call follow-ups and all of that. But it does take a lot of time, and it's effective.
Following up.
Yeah, very, very important. And it's effective in varying degrees. And I think, a lot of people will just send out an email and never follow up. And I just actually had this a situation like that about 2 weeks ago where I had a follow-up email, which happened, and then I had a great meeting, and a rep that I know by the name of Frank Mayo, great guy who I've become friendly with over the years. I knew that he was friendly with the art buyer that I was meeting with at this ad agency, and I texted him to ask if he can give me some sort of a scoop on her, which he did. And then the next day after the meeting, asked how the meeting went, and I said, "Oh, it went great." And he's like, "What are you going to do from here?" And I was kind of like, "I'm going to send a really nice email." And he just calls me right away. He's like, "What do you think you're doing? Like, every schmuck in New York is doing the same damn thing you're doing." And he totally got on my case for it. And that was like the perfect kick in the butt that I needed. So I made a really nice, like, handmade, like, little quick written note with a couple little printouts of my work, like, packaged up really nicely. And, something like that. I can't say that's going to get me a job, but something that feels a little more personal and that maybe makes me stand out amongst the 20 other photographers that he or she met with that week is important. And maybe at some point down the road will get me a job with that client. But will it? I mean, there's no 100% in any of this. So marketing is a huge, huge challenge on the day-to-day.
Yeah. I mean, it's also thinking about, like, what would you like to receive, Another email or, like, a little something. I think it often plays into what's kind of personal to you,
Sure.
It's a
I
great
definitely
idea.
don't remember the last time I dug up like any on my inbox to find a photographer. I think. I mean, obviously, I work with art buyer who, whenever I have a specific project, I send in my idea to the art buyer, and they give me a list of photographers. But I do have quite amount of occasions where I actually find the photographer, and actually 90% of the time, those are like even postcards. Like, I don't throw them away because I forget to, but they're always piling on my desk. But like, I'm like, oh my gosh, I remember that postcard with that image. I may not know your name,
Sure.
but I think we had this conversation
Many
years ago.
times,
We talked
yeah.
about, like, I like getting that paper. I still like getting
Yeah.
photographer's book in front of me. I know it's such a hassle. I know how much it costs to actually get book printed and send it to the agency, and we have to ship it back and all that. Such a hassle. But if it's a project that's worth the time, I would actually tell the art buyer, please reach out to the photographer so I can get the actual book. So I can look at it. It also just shows, like, the taste level of the photographer. There's certain things I can tell by looking at JPEG or whatnot, PDF of photographer. There's a certain level of taste I get from how they bind the book, what kind of paper they use, and, like, the details that just, for me being a very much detail-oriented creative, like, that for me is a selling point. And I'm right now in my stage of career. I can't take a risk working with a photographer. I just can't, I just don't trust.
Yeah.
Like, and that's just another thing. Just reason to believe, I guess,
Yeah.
so to speak.
So, Thomas, can you talk a little bit more about how you find photographers, what photographers do to get either hired again by you or to get you to recommend them to other people?
There's actually 3 different ways I find photographers. I actually didn't think about it until today. I'm like, how do I find photographers? And art buyers, obviously, huge. I try to keep good relationship with my art buyers, just so I know, and also art buyers who are not biased. That's actually huge. It's hard to find. So there are a lot of photographers they bring in. I'm just like not sure, but they have personal relationship, which doesn't really cut for me. And second way is through cards and something photographers directly send to me. And the third is interesting, Instagram actually. That's been a very much very useful tool for me, especially. I think more I work in this industry, I know obviously I know exactly what I want, and there's something in my head and I want it, and it's just something someone can't get it for me. I just have to do it. So like the best resource is Instagram actually.
Yeah.
And I actually found my last project I worked on like a month ago through Instagram. Liz Von Heine, she's amazing, and it worked out great. And booked a meeting. I contacted my art buyer, get her, please. And so it's so crazy how Instagram, social media in general, is actually, as cliche as it sounds, it plays a huge role for me finding inspiration, not for photographer, but like designers and even clients, actually. Oh.
Yeah. Absolutely.
Social media.
Mm-hmm.
It is time consuming. How do you guys decide which platforms to use, what to do? How do you use social media? What seems to work for you? What doesn't?
I feel like Instagram has a broader reach. I have a page, but I've been a bit kind of bad at upkeeping it for some reason, a Facebook page. I think Facebook, with all due respect, is kind of shifted into like more babies and weddings. So, you know, while it's great to have a page, and I definitely recommend it, I think Instagram is a little bit more, it's almost like anonymous, and yet you can have your own stamp at the same time. And going back to like organization, if you keyword stuff, it actually works. Like, whether that's metadata for your website or keywording in social media, like people search and they find stuff. I mean, not always, but I think it can't hurt to do that. And I believe in, I mean, Instagram's annoying and all that, but it's also so amazing. Like all these people who 5 years ago I would have never have interacted with, all of a sudden they stumble upon me or I stumble upon them, and it's like this community that's formed that it brings across people across the world. So, I mean, I don't know where it's going to go, but it's not going away anytime soon, that's for sure.
I'd also agree on Instagram for me. You know, I got a pretty decent following on Twitter years back, and then sort of it's just become a spam feed to me, to be perfectly honest. And being a visual person, seeing something that doesn't have links built in, like Instagram, the fact that you can't put a link is actually really pretty cool. So it's about photography, and you know, you choose who to follow and who not to follow, but I really like seeing just a steady photo stream of who I follow, and that's how I keep up with most photographer friends. Instagram, I've also, you know, not so much for self-promotion, but just for general like online inspiration in that realm, like obviously Pinterest and Nice and Design Inspiration and all of those things, but just started using those and signed up and all that. But yeah, I mean, Instagram for the most part, have the blog, have Tumblr, pretty good about updating the website and all of that, but you gotta kind of not pick your battles, but choose where you want to devote most energy to.
You sort of do, right? Because you don't have
There's
100%
so much
to put into everything.
And I don't think either one of us have staff. You know, I have help on occasion, but it's, you know, we are essentially one man, one woman businesses, and you know, we're pretty young in all of our careers. And yeah, you can only spread yourself so thinly. You have to concentrate your energy where you think it's going to be most beneficial, and just sort of dive in and see what happens.
And I think like organizing your week, you know, you could have one day that's 2 hours devoted to Instagram, you know, and then organizing you could possibly post for the next 6 to 7 days. I mean, I think there's ways to create time and make time. I think sometimes we're constantly trying to run and catch up, but if we slow down and we take a second to kind of reorganize ourselves, even if it takes a month that's going to help you in the long run. And I can't like emphasize that more than getting organized, putting metadata into your images, like making sure you have yourself situated and sorted so that when that big job does come or whatever, you're ready, you know, and you're not scrambling to find stuff, and you have proof and you have this. It's so beneficial, I think.
Okay, so you guys are artists, right? But you work. So how do you balance your personal creative vision and your client's vision? Do you find that your personal creative vision is fueled by your client work? Are those separate types of work? What do you do to fuel your creativity? Go.
Start that one off.
I have been lucky that a lot of my jobs are word of mouth. I mean, I feel very fortunate in that way. I find it funny because sometimes a lot of my work is kind of, you know, a little bit moody and dramatic, and it's usually around women, and they may or may not be clothed, and I'll get, you know, emails being like, oh, I think you'd be perfect to like take pictures for my little daughter, and I'm like, oh. It's interesting. I don't really see the correlation, but thank you, thank you. So, I mean, those are kind of the extremes, but I definitely get word of mouth. I think I've noticed that because I've had a kind of a constant stream of that, it takes time away from also maybe pushing myself to other jobs I actually do want. So I think I'm coming into this sort of stage in my life where saying no is actually better than saying yes, and just allocating your time so that you're balancing between your client's vision and also what you want to be doing. And I think a lot in terms of vision, people often hire you because they like your vision. So it sort of feeds into each other. And I think just making sure that you kind of communicate well and make sure that you're on the same page and that you have image references, whether that's your own work or someone you like that works with the story. I think that's really important. But, creativity, I think, also is what we do. And so it comes through while we're shooting. Unless you're shooting something that is stripped down completely of any creativity, I mean, I don't know if you'd ever take that job anyway. So, yeah.
Thomas, can you talk about that creative relationship since you're sort of on the other side of it?
I used to do more personal project. I'm not going to lie, I said I do a lot. I'm such a creative person. I used to, definitely. I think I try not to mix my work and what I do my personal side too much because, again, my job as a creative director is to be rational 80% of the time. Sometimes I can't really push like my creative agenda all the time. I try to, but not all the time. So I had this dilemma, a small portion of my life last year where I 2 years ago, oh my god, it's already been 2 years 2 years ago, where I quit this job, this agency I was working for 4 years because I wanted to do something different. And before that I tried so hard, like, how do I do something that make me happy as a creative and still be a really good admin, and it just wasn't working for me. It was just a constant struggle, and to the client it just looked like I'm just pushing my personal agenda versus really care about their business. And I forgot that I do work in a service industry at the end of the day. I do, like, my job is to solve my client's problem with my creative vision. And for me, I'm very grateful of that part of my job, and I'm very happy with that. And in order for me to stay sane, though, I have to do my personal business. So I took a year off, and I went to Australia, and I got everything out of my system. And now and I'm done with that. I'm like, I need health insurance, so I'm back. But I've worked with people who balance it pretty well. I think they do everything really well. They have a very clear creative voice, and they somehow incorporate that into their work and everything. But for me, I think I'm too selfish to to waste my personal time to make someone else's money in a way.
I mean, I can totally relate to that because I feel like my creativity has thrived so much since I basically stopped shooting professionally, because that whole level of pressure of needing to show the work or needing the work to get me work is removed. And so, working as a photo editor, I get to look at photography all day. I'm talking to photographers, I'm helping them, or at least I think I'm helping them. I'm trying to help them. But then, my creative work can be this like really precious, sacred thing.
That's a great, interesting point. I think a lot of people really thrive when they're not, I don't want to say forced, but yeah, not forced to do this for a living. For me, this is truly all I know how to do. I have no idea what I would do if I wasn't doing this. Might work at a Starbucks or something, like truly no idea. So yeah, this is what I do. I don't think I chose it, but it also kind of chose me, and I don't mean that in any egotistical way or anything like that at all. But this is really all I know how to do pretty well. And I'm obviously progressing over the years and all of that, but it's a lifelong journey. So I've been really fortunate in that as far as personal vision and creative vision, I do, generally speaking, get hired for jobs that I want to be shooting. That's a huge advantage. A good point that I want to bring up is that being in a big city has, one could say, oh, I don't want to move to a big city. There's way too much competition, but there's unlimited possibilities here. And the huge advantage of being in a huge city like New York is that you can kind of build as specific of a niche as you want. So I used to live in, Lehigh Valley, Allentown area in Pennsylvania, sort of between Philadelphia and New York. Very small market to work in, and in a place like that, there's no way that I could have made money as a portrait photographer in the music entertainment industry. I was shooting weddings when I lived there. I was shooting like events and all types of random things that I didn't necessarily want to be doing, but all of those things culminated to enable me to make a living in photography. And that's what you have to do when you're in a smaller market. When you're in a city, especially as you progress in your career, you really have the ability to be kind of as specific as you want. And further, the more specific of a niche you can kind of define yourself as, I think down the road, the higher prices you can demand, because you're the person who's the best at doing that one thing. And that's huge. One could, you could call that pigeonholing yourself, but I don't think that's the case in a market like this. So, I've been really fortunate to get a lot of work that I do want to be shooting. And a lot of my work is really, quick portraits for editorial publications. It's a 5-minute portrait for the Associated Press or for a magazine or a newspaper or, a commercial client, something like that. And that is a huge part of my work. So they're hiring me, and I'm not there with a photo editor or a creative director. They know the type of work that I'm going to produce, and they trust that I'm going to go do that. On the flip side, I have a shoot on Thursday. I'm doing rebranding for a Grammy-winning musician and been working with the creative director today. For instance, we were on the phone with each other looking at Pinterest mood boards that we had put together, just going over concepts. So that's just to make sure with a production like that you're all on the same page, that your props are correct, that the styling is spot on for that particular brand. So those things come into play as well. But I like a balance of those two things where I sort of have all the trust from the client and sort of where I'm collaborating with someone as well. So.
And also, like, going into a point of creating a niche for yourself, within that niche, there's like so many different outlets you can put that medium into. It's not just a magazine anymore. It's a million different options. So I think it's really having a clear vision of what you want to be shooting and then getting that out there. We're really lucky these days that it's not just one outlet. I mean, there's so many that people are also constantly consuming. So I think, no matter what you're doing, just keeping that, I guess, open and understanding that you it's not just one outlet for your image or your moving picture, whatever it may be. So we're lucky.
For sure.
I definitely want to see, I think for photographers, speaking of, I'm going back to kind of personal creative assignments and whatnot, I actually have hired photographers because of their personal work. Because I sometimes look for photographers that are impossible to find. Like, for example, I had this idea for a model standing and there's all these peacocks of objects shooting out of her back or something like that, right? And you're like, your client asks you like, oh, can I have a list of photographers? And our clients being businessmen, all they see is I want to see a photographer who does exactly that. You can never find that. So in that case, literally a project I just shot 2 months ago was find a photographer who's an amazing portrait photographer, amazing, and I want to work with her. And coincidentally, I went to her private page, personal work section on her website, and she does a lot of collage. So I was able to take those as a mood board and present to my client, and that worked out. So I think I definitely like point of view. That's how I hire people, like for that specific style. But at the same time, I like when I see something slightly different, where it can sort of inspire me to, come up with a new visual or new ideas. So I think that personal work definitely excites me more sometimes.
Yeah.
So the stronger your personal vision, the more gratifying the work that you get will be.
I think that's pretty
I think
accurate.
that's a good summary.
Yeah.
Okay. And then what about your non-work lives, if such a thing exists? You guys have a work-life balance. Have you found a balance point that at least feels like your life is currently sustainable? What do you do to nurture your holistic humanity?
Sustainable, yeah. I think it's a whirlwind, right? The freelance world, you absolutely have no idea what your schedule is going to be like, next week, or like I could get an email right now for a shoot tomorrow morning.
Yeah.
Like clients like Associated Press will do that. And that's cool, and if I can take it, I will. But like your schedule can be really unpredictable. I think trying to, really, really work your butt off and build a strong brand while at the same time trying to have somewhat of a social life is really important. It is a tough balancing act for sure.
I
but-
mean, it's New York City. Are we ever balanced?
No.
You know what I mean? Is anybody here balanced? No. But I agree with you. I mean, it's finding that, networking can be fun, and you're going out, and I don't know. I do yoga as much as I can, but maybe that's just me.
I have 2 dogs. That's
Yeah.
about it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yes, dogs.
Personal life.
I'm a downward dog.
There you go. No, but I
Any
don't.
other-
Yeah, it's definitely not impossible. I think that's the best way to put it. I think a lot of people who are like, "Oh, I have no life," I think that's because that person wants no life.
Yeah.
That
it's a
person
choice.
and it's a choice. At the end of the day, I think no one. I mean, unless you're like in a horrible situation, no one's gonna make you work 24 hours a day. And 24 hours is a long time, and you probably need 7 hours to sleep. And you kind of, if you really break it down, you do have at least 3 hours a day to do something. I think it's a matter of what you choose to do. I think that's, and also I think it just gets easier as you your career progresses. I think you figure out a way to how do I keep myself sane.
Time management.
Yeah, time management is huge.
And I think a lot of photographers are perfectionists, which I completely relate to, but it's knowing when it's enough or when you're done with the edit, or it's just being done. I think that is healthy in its own way.
And learning as well as a freelancer that the fact that you're not, when you're working, say from your home, from the studio, you're not working on 9 to 5, 9 to 6 corporate hours. You can you make your own time frame, and I think that that's really important to know, sort of to learn, and you do as you go along, sort of when you're most efficient throughout the day or evening, and to know sort of when it's okay to take breaks, even if it's a 2 or 3 hour block. Like you might find that you are most creative if you're brainstorming for a project. You might find that you're most creative 8 to 11 o'clock at night. So you can take some time during the day, maybe to do something else, and you can, to go food shopping, for instance, which you can do as a freelancer. Like, cool, you don't have to deal with crowds. You can do things like that. But you have to be obviously extremely well disciplined and all that. But yeah, it's just you get more efficient with it the more you work on it.
Okay. Yoga. All right. So there are a lot of really unglamorous parts of running a business. There's a lot of admin stuff. You spend time invoicing, you're filing taxes, filing quarterly taxes, hopefully, marketing, social media. Do you guys outsource any of that? Do you hire people? Do you do it all yourself? How do you manage all of the administrative stuff?
I occasionally have somebody. I had a period where I had an intern for about 6 months. Right now, I'm basically working, with a marketing person for like a day a week, essentially, which has proven to be really helpful. And that's all they're doing. So far, so good. I mean, just dealing, again, not to step back too far, but talking about follow-ups earlier, I think that's something that I really fall on my face doing. I mean, the last thing I want to do is send out, 100 follow-up emails. I'm just never going to get to it. And those things very easily get the back burner, and that just goes on for months at a time. And you're really not seeking out new clients the way that, might work out for you. So, 2 weeks ago, having somebody in who was sending emails on my behalf, personal emails, but emails on my behalf to a whole bunch of art buyers and all of that, scored me a couple of meetings that I just wouldn't have gotten, if she hadn't done that. So certain things like that I definitely do outsource. As far as like invoicing and all that, I am still doing all that, and I hope to get to the point that I don't have to do lots of tasks like that in the not too far off future, but I'm still doing that. Yeah.
Well, and Kezi, you talked about chunking, right? Like setting aside certain chunks
I
of
try to
time.
do that as much as possible, and I'm on FreshBooks, which I find is helpful with tracking invoices and who hasn't paid me. And I mean, it's very common to not get paid for months sometimes with clients. It's incredibly
Sorry
frustrating.
about that.
Yeah. I'm like, oh. But I think, again, just going back to organization, if you're organized within this chaos, you can kind of at least make attempts to doing this follow-up. But I also agree, like, if you feel overwhelmed, get someone to help you. It doesn't mean you're bad, doesn't mean you're failing. It just means you need some help. And, like, they happen to specialize in that. So
If you
why
need help,
not?
that means you're doing really well.
Yeah.
Also, just be proud of it and just get
Yeah,
help.
exactly.
It's that you don't want to trip over that. I mean, I don't think anyone can do everything. I mean, and sometimes I do get like late in, when I work with photographers for small projects. Like sometimes I get things late, but I can't blame them because I know I have a lot of friends who are photographers and directors, and I know how slammed they are and everything. So we're never gonna blame you. I mean, someone might blame you, but I won't. So yeah, I mean, if you need help, you gotta get it.
So you can't do everything. Okay.
I like your clip then.
So, amidst all of this, what are you guys working on right now? What are you most
Cinemagraphs.
Cinemagraphs.
I love
Me
cinemagraphs.
too. They're fun.
Very cool.
I don't know. I mean, yeah, go on.
Oh no, I have a project that's going to launch next week that I'm really proud of. Campaign that I just shot for an unnamed company that I just shot down in Nicaragua and around Asia over the holidays. So had a pretty substantial shoot that is launching over the next couple weeks. So really excited to put that out there very soon. And super sort of lifestyle type of work, which is really cool for me because I'm oftentimes thrown in, a conference room or a hotel room, and I'm forced to produce a portrait where there's not a lot of room to do something really loose. And on top of that, having no time with somebody to really connect with them. So I'm very used to shooting a 45-second portrait of a musician, but to actually, go to a beach in Nicaragua and shoot like surf lifestyle stuff was really, really cool. And to get hired to do it, was kind of a dream job. So, really excited for that and just sort of, just messing around with a lot of stuff, reaching out to a lot of people, and excited that the year's off to a really good start. So, Thomas.
And cinemagraphs.
Cinemagraphs
So,
and video,
yeah.
but I just finished the video.
Oh.
I just finished a short, which some people have seen. So that was exciting. Took a lot of effort and work, but it's worth it.
It's amazing.
I really believe in moving image. If you I haven't said that. Yeah.
So my first ever project with Dell was to rebrand Dell as a campaign. That's pretty much it. Rebrand Dell. How do you rebrand Dell? We'll find out. So we just finished shooting everything from print to TV with Liz Von Heine, photographer, and Philip, who's an amazing director. We did 2 commercials and 6 prints, which is big. So that will be out starting end of this month, and it'll be just keep being released. And I'm shooting another. That was the consumer part of Dell. We're doing new set of commercials for Dell.com, which is kind of really fun with comedian Nick Thunes, which we're shooting next week, so it should be good. He's a lot of work. It's mind-boggling because I freelance for Apple and whatnot, and it's very focused. And I kind of forgot how difficult it is to work on a global account. Whereas you have to worry about India and China, which is what? I don't have to worry about them. But it's been interesting, and I'm excited to learn more because, again, being a global creative, this is my first time being a global creative director, so every day I'm just learning.
Yeah.
Cool.
Okay. So why do this work? What is the point? And what are you guys striving for? How do you define success for yourself? Discuss.
I mean, I think like Drew, I don't know what else to do. I mean, this is all I think about. So, I mean, eventually I'm hoping that you guys see my moving cinemagraphs on billboards, that's kind of the direction I want to go, is bigger and better. But I think going back to kind of the beginning of what I talked about is I started off traveling a lot as a young child, and when you travel, you meet people and you connect with people in ways. And I think photography, what it symbolizes for me in my life is that connection, because everyone you meet, you're creating a moment where they're pretty vulnerable and they're kind of letting go and they're doing something they may or may not like or be used to, or even if they are used to it, it's always a new experience. And so what satisfies me the most is creating a whole new world out of something that wasn't there before. And that connection and that thrill of kind of getting this person to see themselves in a new light, and my light, you know. So I think that's why I do it, is that kind of connection. And just, I mean, the adventures I've been on because of I have a camera is insane, you know. And I can't even imagine what it'd be like if I worked in an office every day. And I'm not saying it's bad to work in an office at all, but just the way I am and the person I am is I'm always up for the next road trip, the next adventure, like, let's get my camera and go. And that's what photography is that, you know, ability to kind of be and try on new experiences that you wouldn't normally get.
I think early in a career, the good measure of success is surviving, which I'm getting a little bit beyond right now, but you know, I'm surviving in the largest marketplace in New York. I'm doing better than just paying my rent. Like, I'm making my entire living in photo, and that's pretty cool. And that's something that I think, you know, speaking back to the niche that I was talking about before, you can build a really specific niche. And I think a lot of people out of school told me that, you know, I needed to diversify, that I couldn't just take pictures of musicians. And it's diversified in that now I do a lot more pictures of, like, movie and TV actors and actresses. So it has that celebrity aspect to it as well, which then leads to, you know, say doing advertising work with those types of people or bigger commercial jobs with those people. So, yeah, I mean, Kezban hit it on the head. Like, we are so incredibly lucky to do this. And the fact that because we hold a camera in our hands, we are invited into people's lives, and oftentimes really private lives. And it's just amazing that we get to do that. I mean, even if it's spending no time with somebody, you know, one of my most memorable shoots ever was last year, spending like half an hour with Quincy Jones, like once in a lifetime experience, like one of the most genuine, amazing people I've ever met. And I never would have gotten to do that working, say, you know, anything other than a photographer, and as far as I can think of. But it really affords you incredible life experiences that are very unique to this industry, and it buys you plane tickets around the world. And yeah, I think for me, it's expanding into more, you know, commercial and advertising work on an international level. I've spent a lot of time in Asia, and I want to spend more time there. And, you know, for me to be able to work for an agency over there and get even a couple of jobs per year, say in Tokyo, or I just got back from Tokyo actually, and just fascinated with it. And to be able to go to different parts of Asia or anywhere in the world, really, a couple of times a year to shoot a big job would be a huge mark of success for me moving forward. But just really happy and fortunate to be here and to be doing this. So no complaints.
Actually, mine's a little smaller. But I think what I realized in past few jobs I've been doing, not being rejected by other creatives, I think, is a huge measure of success. I think I'm okay with, you know, my mom and my dad not knowing what I do and how successful I am. That doesn't bother me as much, but it comes down to, like, you know, for example, I send in my, you know, my creative vision, my script, or my Photoshop comp to a photographer, and them saying yes, oh, that's something I want to work on, versus like, don't have time for that. So I think getting accepted by my fellow creative community, I think, is big measure of success, and them kind of giving their stamp of approval in a way.
Yeah.
It's big. It makes you cry a little bit.
So I heard personal growth, joy, just enjoyment of the process, adventure, profound experiences with other people. Yeah,
Small things.
sounds pretty good. Are there any questions out? Yes.
Here, we got a mic.
Oh, we have a microphone.
Testing.
How do you deal with when you get a client and you know there's a lot of pressure to do a great job and they're expecting a lot out of you? how do you deal entering that project and keeping calm, and not, you're facing possible failure if it doesn't come out well, right? So sometimes I go into a project and that kind of like overwhelms me, and I try to keep calm. You know, I've had a lot of success, a lot of failure, but how do you deal with that, where you keep calm and you know there's a certain expectations of you on the from the client?
I think that's every single phone call or email that any of us get on a daily basis. Every job has the potential for like the utmost failure you could ever imagine, and you know, your name is on the work that you produce. You know, depending on, you know, if you're shooting for editorial, say, which is a lot of my work, my name is attached to the photo. If you're doing advertising work, generally speaking, not as much, but regardless, your name is on the product, and it's really just you know, I will turn down a job if it doesn't feel right for me. If I'm not the right photographer, I will happily recommend someone else who will do that job much, much better than I, because that's a responsible thing to do. And, you know, a lot of it also, of course, comes down to just pre-production and having really straight talks with this prospective client and making sure that your vision is of the same. Just preparing yourself as best as possible. And yeah, I think honestly things like yoga and just general like meditation, there's a great app called Headspace. Using things like that just to actually stay calm and doing your research on your talent that you're shooting. For me, it's shooting people. A lot of times that's for me to have conversation points. If I'm shooting a professional actress or actor, they're not nervous, but I am. So I'm actually doing the research so I can walk in there really well educated. So I'm actually talking to them and keeping it fluid and keeping everything moving and having some music on. It's like, you know, I'll like research their favorite snacks if I can find that, literally, and their favorite music and play that music. And like, it's just making sure you're going into a shoot as absolutely well prepared on every basis as you possibly can be. I mean, technical stuff is a whole nother conversation, but there's so many aspects of that. But just those are a couple things I do.
And also realizing that as a photographer, you're a problem solver. That's kind of, you know, the other name. So realizing, you know, I don't know, whatever works for you to calm down, but just taking a problem, if it's, you know, that type of problem, and just seeing like, okay, well, what's another solution? Let's come up with 5 other solutions, you know, if that's available to you.
Yeah, but I guess I'm saying there's no way to, you're always entering an exciting, it's an incredible field, the most exciting thing I've ever done, like you guys, but there's always an element of failure.
I mean, there's always an element of unknown. I don't
Yeah.
think there's a single photographer, no matter how good you are, that doesn't go into a shoot with, there's an, you know, always that, oh, like, it could fail. It could. But that's,
I don't want to dwell on the negative, but it comes across my mind when I'm shooting, like,
There's a book you should get. It's called Art and Fear.
yes, it's so
And
good.
there's another
I've
one
read
called
it.
The War of Art. But I mean, fear and
Art and Fear is
anxiety
really good.
to do creative work is to be vulnerable, and it's to, you know, be putting yourself out there. And that's a really challenging thing, but it's something inherent to the process. So
I just go home every day whenever I do something horrible, just like tell yourself I didn't cure cancer. Like, you know, I'm fine. No one died.
Yeah. No one died.
Keep calm.
Yeah.
No one died.
It's not brain surgery.
Yeah, not yet.
I was interning at a newspaper, and I was on my first ever food assignment, and one of the staffers came with to show me how to light a hamburger, and I am shaking and I'm sweating. I'm literally sweating through my clothes, and I'm like, and he's like, "What is wrong?" And I'm like, "I don't know what I'm doing." And he's like, "Nobody has ever died from a terrible photograph of a hamburger. It is fine. Just relax." So
Anyone else? Oh, back here. I wanted to know what kind of camera you guys started out shooting with, and what kind of cameras do you shoot with now?
Welcome to Adorama.
Yeah, right? As we sit amongst millions of dollars of camera gear in front of us at Adorama. I started shooting on a Pentax Spotmatic, which was kind of like a K1000, old school film camera that like an uncle gave me. And I shot tons and tons and tons of black and white film. I started on that, and I also had at that time look down Rolleiflex dual lens reflex camera, which is a lot of fun, and I still have that I found in my grandparents' basement in the original box, and like never used. Still have that, but now I shoot Nikon DSLRs and I shoot Leica rangefinder. I don't care, I teach occasionally and speak occasionally, and I always tell people it really, so many people, especially in like the workshop world, get really, really wrapped up in gear and in like the blogosphere, and there's so many technical blogs, and like, I'm not saying it's not a good question, because it is, but just keep in mind that like, just go with whatever feels right to you, because maybe she shoots Canon, maybe he shoots Sony, like whatever. I mean, they're all to the point where, all of our gear shoots really great quality stuff, and it's about knowing how to utilize that equipment to like build a vision and all of that stuff. So I don't mean to preach.
What's your end goal? If your end goal is going to be huge, billboard size, maybe you need something with bigger frame. But if you're just shooting a little, I mean, it's really dependent upon what you want. I started with Nikon, and now I'm a Canon girl. So, One
of my first photography teachers said to use whatever camera you have until you get to a point where you find your gear getting in the way of whatever you want to accomplish. And then you start finding other equipment to help you get there.
Have you guys ever exhibited photos in galleries, and do you find that a good tool to kind of like get your name even more out there, or not really? Is it more about making the phone calls, sending emails, sending the print mailers? Is that a good vehicle to get known?
It's all a good vehicle. I mean, I don't think there's any one way. I think if your images are the type that, I mean, all images could be in a gallery, but I guess there's some maybe that work more. And if that's the type, then absolutely. Or have a show, or rent a space and have a show. And I mean, people, and to be honest, to see work on a computer screen is amazing, but when you see it printed, it's awesome. I mean, I don't think a single photograph doesn't look amazing blown up big on a wall. I mean, maybe some photographs, but you know what I mean? Like, it's pretty impressive. So if that's kind of the type of thing you want to go, absolutely. It's not going to be a hinder. It's really the printing costs that kind of come into play, but if you can manage that, then go for it.
Yeah, for myself, I won't say that I'm definitely not in the fine art world so much, but I do print a lot. Some of that is just for a print portfolio, which I think is a really important thing to have. I don't personally want to show my work on an iPad. I mean, everything looks great in an iPad, but I think having a print book really shows a certain level of quality and care that you have for your product. And I'll stand by that. But and I also, there's a huge difference between seeing something in a printed form versus on a screen that we're staring at all day, and it's a beautiful thing. I mean, it really is. So I do try to print quite regularly. I have a printer at home, and I print a lot, and I really, really love to do that.
Hi.
Hey.
Hi.
I did just kind of walk in on this, and I wanted to jump in and ask a question really quick. Hi, everybody. I had a random question for you. How do you guys go about nurturing your not ready to like buy clients, or like clients or creative directors that you may reach out to for jobs, and they'd be like, oh, not now, but how do you go about nurturing them in order to like poach them later?
How do you nurture relationships?
I think that it's a very fine balance of not being over the top in somebody's face, which I think, unfortunately, some people do. You can only push so hard, but just staying in touch for me, it's like it is sending out promo pieces, and that is a mix of email and printed promotional pieces. Do that on a regular basis, and connect on your social media channels and all of that, so they know what you're up to. I mean, my first job ever from Rolling Stone magazine was from a photo editor who followed me on Instagram who I had never met. Like, those things happen. And it's, yeah, follow them on Instagram and maybe they'll follow you back and like those types of things. I mean, and it's like a delicate way of like forging a relationship, and it's not like they're going to call you tomorrow. Maybe they will. But like, you know, if somebody respects your work, more often than not, it's just a matter of them finding the right job to sort of place you in. And I have many like art buyer friends of mine who like, I know like and respect my work and me as a person and as a photographer and all of that. But it's like if they don't have the right client for the type of work that I produce, they're not going to hire me, and that's understandable. So it's just a matter of, yeah, gingerly easing things along, I guess. Depends on the client, or the type of client, rather.
Okay.
Yeah, I mean, there's magazines. Magazine last week, just, you know, who I met with around Photo Expo time. I did a portfolio review with them. You know, said that I was at the top of our list for an upcoming issue, and, you know, asked if I had some things, any ideas. You know, she was happy to entertain those. So yeah, on occasion I do. But I think it really just depends on multiple things. I mean, the type of client and obviously your relationship with the client. I'm not going to reach out to somebody I've never spoken to and say, hey, what do you think about this grand idea? Like, hire me. Like, that's not probably the best way to go about it. But yeah, it all depends.
I love people, but I hate people at the same time. It's so transparent. Like, you know when someone's just approaching you for a very specific thing. But I do like developing, like, around me, I like developing this creative kind of group who I can talk to and talk about things. Yes, and I have a lot of photographer friends who are part of that, but I definitely don't like when people just constantly email you every week asking for a job instead of like saying, and I heard you're working on this and that, can I be part of it? Which is great. You can definitely ask me that. But like when I tell you, oh, I don't think this is right for you, that's when you kind of back up, I think. But I definitely have a photographer who just didn't stop and wouldn't stop. And even, and later on along the line, even if there's like a project that was right for that person, I'm probably like, he's annoying, I'm not going to go with him. If I'm going to get stuck.
Okay. Well, thank you, everyone.